You ever wonder why some companies, think Apple or Toyota, just seem to win decade after decade, while others are a flash in the pan? It's one of the biggest questions in business, and honestly, the answer has been a moving target for something like half a century. To really get it, we need to look at how the very idea of strategy has changed over time.
I mean, it all boils down to this one fundamental question. What is it? Is it a visionary leader, a killer product, being in the right place at the right time? For decades, the entire field of strategic management has been obsessed with pinning down the answer. And generally, the answers fall into two big buckets. Is success something that's baked right into a company's DNA? Its internal strength, its culture, that secret sauce? Or is it all about mastering the world outside, playing the industry game better than anyone else? So, inside versus outside. And that brings us to our central idea, which comes from this fantastic metaphor in a landmark 1999 paper by Hoskisson and his colleagues. They noticed that the focus of strategic thinking, it doesn't just sit still. It swings back and forth, just like a pendulum.
So, let's follow that pendulum. We're going to watch it as it swings from an internal focus, way out to the external world of industry analysis, and then all the way back again.
All right, let's start with that first big swing outwards, which really got going in the 1970s. See, after an early focus on what was called a firm's distinctive competence, basically what makes a company special, thinkers wanted something more rigorous, more scientific. So they started looking outside the company, at the industry itself.
The big idea during this era came from a field called industrial organization economics, or just IO for short. The core concept was simple but really powerful. Your company's performance is determined, first and foremost, by the industry you happen to be in. Some industries are just, built to be more profitable than others.
Now, this was all based on the structure, conduct, performance paradigm. The logic goes just like this. The structure of the industry dictates the strategic conduct, the moves, that are available to firms. And that conduct, in turn, determines their ultimate performance. The company itself was almost seen as secondary to the big, powerful forces of the market.
And the most famous tool to come out of this whole way of thinking? Michael Porter's 5 forces. It gave managers a crystal clear way to map out their industry by looking at 5 things. The threat of new companies coming in, how much power your suppliers have over you, how much power your buyers have, the threat of substitute products, and of course, how intense the rivalry is with your direct competitors.
So the really crucial point of this first swing is that it forced strategy to become externally aware. For the first time, leaders had a real language and a solid toolkit to understand their competitive landscape in a systematic way. It taught them to look outside.
Okay, but here's the problem. This outside-in view couldn't explain everything. Like, why did some companies in supposedly bad industries do incredibly well? The pendulum started to swing back, and this time the goal was to peek inside what economists had kind of dismissively called the black box of the firm.
This brought a whole new set of ideas to the table, all under the banner of organizational economics. Instead of just looking at the industry, researchers started asking some really tough questions about how firms themselves were actually organized and run.
2 key theories really stood out. First, transaction cost economics. It asks a super fundamental question. Is it cheaper and more efficient for us to do something in-house or to just go out and buy it on the open market? Then you have agency theory, which tackles that classic problem of making sure that managers, the agents, are actually acting in the best interest of the owners.
And the real-world impact of this swing was huge. It gave us the intellectual foundation for major strategic decisions we still see every single day. Everything from outsourcing and strategic alliances to how we structure corporate boards and executive pay. And that brings us to the pendulum's full return journey. By the 1980s and into the 90s, the spotlight was right back on what makes a company unique, on its internal DNA.
This timeline really puts the whole journey into perspective. You can clearly see the flow of ideas, right? From that early internal focus in the 60s, swinging way out to IO economics in the 70s, then that partial swing back with organizational economics, all leading to a full return with what we now call the resource-based view.
The resource-based view, or RBV for short, became the dominant way of thinking. Its main argument is that long-term success doesn't just come from picking a good industry. It comes from developing and protecting a set of resources and capabilities that are truly unique to your firm. And the RBV became super practical, thanks to Jay Barney's famous 4-part test. For a resource to give you a real, lasting advantage, it has to check 4 boxes. It has to be valuable, rare, difficult to imitate, and not easily substituted. We're talking about things like a company's brand, its unique culture, or some piece of proprietary tech.
And this core idea that your uniqueness is your greatest strength, it has deep roots. As Edith Penrose wrote way back in 1959, strategy isn't about being the same as everyone else. It's about leveraging what makes you different.
So this final swing back inside completely changed the conversation in boardrooms everywhere. The most important strategic question became, what are we uniquely good at? And you know that whole concept of core competencies that you hear all the time? Yep, that comes directly from the resource-based view.
So, does the story end there? Did the pendulum just come to rest right back where it started? Not quite. The story doesn't end with one side winning. The most modern thinking and strategy is all about creating a synthesis, a balanced view.
As the business world gets more complex, with globalization, with rapid tech changes, strategy has to keep evolving. So, new ideas like dynamic capabilities have become critical. It's not just about having good resources. It's about being able to adapt and reconfigure them on the fly. The goal now is to integrate all these perspectives.
And this is the most crucial point of all. The debate is over. Winning in the long run is not an either-or choice. It's not about having a great industry or great internal resources. It's about creating and constantly maintaining a dynamic fit between your unique strengths and the opportunities of the outside world.
And the research totally backs this up. This chart basically shows what explains a company's performance. And while the industry you're in, that external view, definitely matters, studies consistently show that firm-specific effects, the internal view, often explain an even bigger piece of the pie. But the most complete picture, the future of strategy, comes from combining both.
Which brings us to one final question, and this one's for you to think about. When you think about your company, or your team, or even just your own career, is your strategic pendulum stuck? Are you only focused on your internal strengths, blind to the outside world? Or are you obsessed with the competition, forgetting what makes you unique? Because the real magic, as we've just seen, happens when you learn to manage the swing.